Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. I am Kelly, and my host with the most, or my co-host with the most, is Mr. James. What's up, dude?
Hey, my friend. I'm like the co-most?
The co-most?
The co-most?
Oh.
Or nah, the host. The co-host with the most is better. You're right.
The co-host with the most.
Right on. Glad to be here. What do we got planned?
Well, today we have another guest, and today our guest is all talking about something that I think is crazy shit because I've been down that road before, is being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. People forget, when I was married, I had a little flower shop with the ex. And having your own business is not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. And Kim Spencer is a certified high performance coach, and she helps entrepreneurs get to the next level. And you don't even have to be an entrepreneur. If you just as you want to take yourself to the next level, maybe there's something that you've always wanted to do but you've been afraid to do or whatever, and she can help you find that confidence. She can motivate you. She has a website called crownyourself.com. She's high energy. I thought she was a blast. I really enjoyed talking with her. She had a lot of great information.
And I like the way you said high energy, because that's the feeling I got too. She does have she's high energy.
Yeah, high energy, very kind, and just, entrepreneurship, running your own business, trying out there to try to do it on your own is some crazy shit within itself.
That is.
It really is.
It's not easy. I think people think, you start your business and whatever, and then you hire people to run it, and they just throw money at you. It's a piece of cake. It is not.
Well, I think if it was easy, we'd all have our own businesses. So
that's true. And that's
everybody would have their own business. So
yeah.
I can't wait to bring her on. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, certified high performance coach, Kim Spencer. Kimberly, welcome so much to That's Some Crazy Shit. We're so happy to have you here. You are a motivational speaker. You are a coach. You are an entrepreneur. You've done a lot of things. You've got awards. You've been on many platforms. So we are happy and blessed that you have graced us with our little podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Little podcast. With a title like That's Some Crazy Shit. I don't know. Kelly and James, it is so great. I am so grateful to be here with you. So thank you so much for having me on. I am really excited to dive into, to explore what crazy shit we come up with today.
And we're always up for crazy shit.
We're always up for crazy shit. And so me and James always talk about how just life is crazy shit. And, being an entrepreneur is crazy shit, right? Trying to actually get out there, start, run, and maintain your own business can be like the most gut-wrenching, soul-sucking, because I've done it. I've had my own business, and it is like nothing. It is so incredibly scary to do that. So I am glad to hear that there are people out there like you that can help entrepreneurs. So tell everybody, what you do, and talk about your website a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a high performance coach. I work with visionary leaders and founders, typically in the formative stages of their business. This is when most people get tripped up. And I work with a lot of business owners in the formative stages where they're doing anywhere from barely making any money to 2 million. And it just really depends on the industry that you're in for 2 million to be formative. But in that stage, in those first couple years, there's a reason why the statistic with the Small Business Association says that most entrepreneurs give up by the time that after 5 years, 85% of businesses are just done. And that to me, I was like, why? And the statistic that I am really fighting for and fighting against is that only 1% of female business, I think it's 1%, it's 1 to 3%. It's super low of female business owners ever make it to 1 million. And I was like, that is unacceptable. That was bananas for me. And I also think that so many business owners that I see, they're stuck struggling at 5 figures, making this like employee wage when they're not really thriving. And what I work with a lot of my clients on is really the mindset of how do you build certainty and trust into your business? Because we're under this perception, and so much of us have been taught that entrepreneurship is risky. And I'm like, well, possibly, if you haven't cultivated certain skill sets. But I can tell you that if you've cultivated the skill set of selling, which is a basic skill set of entrepreneurship, if you have cultivated that skill set and are able to successfully sell, meaning you're able to have a persuasion conversation where you persuade someone to do something that is something that they also find value in doing, or that they would also find value in doing, then that skill set will set you up for life, no matter what industry, because no matter what business you're in, even if your business crumbles and fails and falls for some reason, no matter what business you go into after that, if you have the skill set of being able to basically manifest money out of nowhere, which is how you generate, you just have a conversation and suddenly somebody wants to pay you for your products or your services, that skill set can be translated into any industry you go in. Even if you decide to go back into being an employee, that skill set could go into conversations that you have with your boss to get a raise. So I actually think that entrepreneurship is the most stable and certain industry that you can be in. It takes a lot of guts to do it, because I do believe that your business is very much a reflection of you. And I mean, when I first started my business, man, I had a year and a half that I did not make any money. Had I actually been employed, those results would have never worked for anybody else. Like, I would have been fired after month 1 for not being able to produce sales. But because I was working for myself, I didn't hold myself to that standard. And that's the thing that I think so many entrepreneurs struggle with, is they get into the place where they start, but they're not holding themselves to the future self standard of what they want to be making. So they stay stuck doing all the little piddly shit in their business, or what I call productive procrastination tasks, like building their Canva images, or like choosing what color they want to use on their website, which none of those actually produce sales or revenue. And that's why so many people get stuck.
Did you find that there was an uptick in people going into business during the pandemic, or did you find that businesses were folding because of the pandemic?
Well, I can say all of my clients were successfully able to pivot during the pandemic. And I did see an uptick in business, but not as strong of an uptick as I believe there needs to be for skill set enhancement. Because people want to start a business, like entrepreneurship is on steroids right now, because people are losing their jobs, or they're choosing to leave their jobs because their jobs are no longer aligned with their values. And in that space, you get the beautiful part about creating a business is you get to create a business that's based on your values. The hard part about building a business is you get to create a business based on your values, where you also have to create the rules. And so it's in a way kind of like you're playing God in a way, like you're forming the baby and you don't even have the DNA for what a baby looks like. You're like, I don't know what this baby's going to look like. But meanwhile, you're supposed to like create the systems that have the neurological connections and the heart connections and a circulatory system and a lung system. And you're supposed to create all these systems so that your business can be a living, breathing entity outside of you, so that you have the freedom to go off and do your thing, and your business supports you. But so often, so many people have bought into this myth that of hard work and I'm not saying hard work isn't valuable. What I am saying is that I believe in diligent work and diligent practices, not just work for work's sake to make things hard. There's a big difference. There's a big difference in the belief system. So when I see people busying themselves, saying that they want freedom, that they created their business so that they could have freedom, and yet they're working more stressed out, more overwhelmed, then that to me says there's certain skill sets that need to be enhanced, like the skill set maybe of delegation or of surrendering control, because entrepreneurs can be a bit of control freaks, especially when you consider your business to be your baby, and the skill set of making decisions, like that in itself is a skill set that needs to be cultivated, because it takes a lot of courage. Because in school, we're brought up to think, oh my gosh, if there's a right way and a wrong way. In entrepreneurship, there is no right way or wrong way. Like there's just, you try this, you see if the market, if what your results are, if it doesn't give you the results that you want, then you pivot and try something else, or you double down on that, or you try something different, or you try it in a different way. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. And where so many beginning entrepreneurs get stuck is that they're so scared of making the wrong move in their business. They're so scared of choosing the wrong branding colors that will bring in the wrong clients. And I'm like, no, there's the only data that you can gather is from experience. And that's by putting your stuff out there and seeing how you need to adapt. It's a dance with the marketplace. It's not a right or wrong thing. There's so many options that it's almost overwhelming. And that's where I think people get stuck.
Interesting. I tend to be one that gets overwhelmed, and so Kelly can tell you how I just kind of freak myself out because I get in my head. Interesting.
So, with being an entrepreneur, and it's a lot of work, right? And you are,
yeah.
But people, I think, what I have heard is the reason why people don't open their own business or go into business for themselves is, oh, I don't have any money. I can't walk away from my job to do my own business because I still have to put food on the table. And so if somebody really wants to start a business, right, but they're stuck, I'm in the working world, but I want to be an entrepreneur, what advice can you give somebody who's wanting to make that move but doesn't know how to do that?
So the only piece of advice that I believe is when you are comfortable leaving your job is when you have built up enough certainty and trust in your ability to produce results in your business. So this is a sliding scale for every single human, because every single human is going to need a different level of certainty and trust. For me, for example, after a year and a half of not making money in my business, and to give you a little backstory, I know exactly why that was. I'd had 2 businesses before. I'd had a Pilates studio and I had an e-commerce startup. And I went through 3 months right before I got married to my husband, where I was going through the buyout from my e-commerce. And that was 3 months where I had never faced lawyers before. I had never had every insecurity that I've ever had, that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't capable enough, that I didn't have college degrees, that I was so young because I was only 24, 25 at the time. I had all these insecurities brought up by quote unquote professionals, so lawyers. And as I was going through this buyout process, and lawyers don't send you the nicest emails when they're not on your side. And so when I was going through that experience, it really for the first time brought doubt into my business. It brought doubt in my ability to produce results or money as an entrepreneur, even though I'd done it before. And so when I was on my honeymoon with my husband, we signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I got married. I got married, went on my honeymoon, and we're in 6 weeks in Italy with my husband. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do when I get back? And I had the idea for Crown Yourself and for coaching and having it be a holistic model that focuses on holistic success in your body and your business and your relationships, so that nothing's coming at the expense of the other one. Because nobody builds a business so that their marriage will fall apart, or nobody builds a business or wants to become an entrepreneur so that they don't spend time with their kids. No, we build businesses because we want to have the freedom and we want to define our lives. And that takes a lot of courage to be able to say, I'm going to choose into having an amazing life. And I'm going to choose into having a belief system that goes against a lot of conditioning that says, I'm going to choose to have a business that also allows me to spend tons of time with my kids. The thing was that I came up with the idea of procrastinating yourself, started the company, and started exactly in what I teach all of my clients now not to do, which was productive procrastination, which really productive procrastination was just because I was so doubtful of myself. I had so much doubt and uncertainty. I felt kicked down like a dog. Like I felt awful, and my self-worth was so low that I even took a side job because I didn't trust myself running my own Pilates studio that I had for years, that I took a side job teaching Pilates at a chiropractic office just to bring in extra income because I didn't trust in my own ability to bring in income from my own business. So a year and a half of dabbling in productive procrastination and being on my computer all the time. I was always busy. I was always on my computer. I don't know what the fuck I was doing, but I was always on it. And I certainly looked busy. I have no idea what I was doing. And I was there and I thought, I was in a space of a year and a half and realizing that I hadn't really done anything. It hadn't gone anywhere. And I had to take a real, honest reality look. And then I found out I was pregnant. And then I was like, motherfucker, I actually got to do this. I knew that the version of me, the doubtful, fearful, scared to take bold moves, scared to get rejected, scared to be judged, I knew that I had to strip that away because I knew that I wanted to raise my children looking at a woman who is able to stand in her power and face rejection and face judgment and still say, I know my worth, and other people's opinions are not what I base my self-validation on. I don't need that. And so I immediately went and got certified in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. And I came back. I was still working my side hustle. I still had my private Pilates studio. And I got my first coaching client for $2,000 off of some gig site. And when I got my first coaching client for $2,000, I knew and I had a level of certainty and trust. I said, I can do this again. Because I knew I trusted in my ability to produce results. I remembered who I was as an entrepreneur. Now, I have another friend who had a very solid 6-figure consulting job in strategic corporate strategy. And she waited until she hit 6 figures in her coaching business before she left, because she needed to have the certainty and trust that she could provide 6 figures for her family. I needed the certainty, like my level of certainty and trust and my tolerance for risk was I just needed to know that I could hit $2,000. I made more with one client for 8 hours of work than I did in a whole entire month of my side hustle. And I was like, oh, duh, I'll leave if I knew I could do it again. And that's the thing. So you can leave your job. So when you have cultivated enough certainty and trust, and the only results that you need to cultivate is the result that people will pay you money for your products or your services. That is the only thing. It's not what branding fonts you use or what colors you use, or if you have a podcast, or if you have like an Instagram handle that's like really cool. Like the only thing you need is the ability that you can produce with certainty and trust, that you can produce income and make sales. That's it.
And that's a good way to put it. I've never had anybody put it that way, but it makes sense. It really does. So
has the light come on, Kelly?
No. It just makes sense, because having been an entrepreneur and watching my daughter, who is an entrepreneur, it makes sense. If you don't trust that you're going to make money, then there's probably really no reason for you to be doing this business. And I think people kind of forget that. I really do.
And if you don't trust that you're going to make money, why is that? Is it because you don't believe in yourself or your services? Is it because you don't believe in what you provide? So it goes down to a level of belief that we need to explore, because if you don't believe in your ability to produce results for someone, or if you don't believe in how awesome your product is, how do you expect anybody else to believe in your product and pay you for it?
Yeah, that is very true. So tell me, like, I was looking at your book, The Start Journey to Entrepreneurship. What made you decide that you were going to write this book? Like, how did that come into being? Because that's not an easy feat to write a book. Did you self-publish it?
It was self-published, and actually it came to me through a mentor of mine. He said he was working with several other entrepreneurs on how they started their business journey, how they started their entrepreneurial journey. So it's actually a collaborative book of several different entrepreneur stories. And it was actually, so many people have this opinion that writing a book is like super hard. And believe me, I have a book that is like my elephant baby. That's my solo produced, like only me writing it, sitting down at the computer with my Scrivener, like just going through them, like looking at that blinking cursor of death, that is just seeing that. Like, so many people think of that as being the hard way, but actually what made this book so easy to be produced was that all I did was talk it. So I spoke through it in an interview format. And so that's what's beautiful about this book, is it's in an interview format, that it made it really easy to then produce and get published and become a bestseller. That's the beautiful thing, is like, when you think that something has to be hard, it can always be hard. But I always like to ask the question, what if I just made this easy? Or what if I just made this simple? And sometimes it's talking it out. Sometimes it's reaching out to a friend and saying, hey, can I just speak through this to you? Sometimes it's having an accountability buddy. But how can you make it simple? Sometimes it's repurposing what you already have. Sometimes it's taking maybe your podcast episodes and just sending them to rev.com, getting them translated, and then you have a book, in essence. Like, there's so many ways that you can repurpose and reuse probably what you've already had to be able to get it done in a really easy and simple way, so that it doesn't have to be this hard feat. So like, I was that's how it got published. Was I was presented with an opportunity. I had the courage to say yes and lean in, even though I didn't feel like I was qualified compared to the other people that I was in, that are also in the book, that are also some of the authors. And yet I still said yes, and yet I still leaned in. And so it was less about the hard work. It was more about the hard part, about overcoming the belief and the lack of belief in myself that it could be that easy.
Wow.
Now I have a question for you. You're a motivational speaker. Who do you listen to get your motivation from?
Oh, good question. I call him my Mac Daddy of entrepreneurship, Ed Milet. Ed Milet, Tom Bilyeu, Katrina Ruth, Amanda Francis. I love Marie Forleo, Brendan Bouchard. It really depends on who I'm in a mood for, like who I'm really feeling. I look to people that have results similar to me. I also find that I'm drawn more to entrepreneurs that are also parents, because I see that there is a belief system that I have that of the extra challenge that doing it while having kids. A lot of people have had their success and then chosen to have kids after they've achieved a lot, and I've chosen to do the two simultaneously, and that is a bit of a different ride. And so mentors and coaches and podcasts that have that spark, that I know also are family people, those are the ones that I listen to.
So what tips can you give our listeners that they can put in, they can use immediately to maybe help their business grow, or maybe just, I think a lot of helping your business grow, before we can even start the business, let's make sure that we have the belief in ourselves, right? So what tips can you give us to help us maybe start there?
Well, actually, the name of your podcast is like the best reframe possible. Because if you're able to step outside yourself and just examine your thoughts and listen to how you're speaking to yourself and how you're thinking about the challenge, because like the challenge of embarking upon starting a business, if you're thinking about it as Mount Everest, you probably aren't going to do it. Like, there's only a certain number of crazy people who choose to climb Mount Everest. If you think of it like a small little hill, you're like, oh, okay, that could be easy. That could be awesome. So as you're examining the thoughts you have and the questions you have and the beliefs that you have, maybe like, oh, but starting a business is super risky. You can always ask, like, when did I decide that? Where did I learn that from? Who taught me that? Who taught me that? And then you can just declare it and say, well, that's some crazy shit right there. Is that ultimately true? Is that ultimately true that starting a business is risky? Well, it depends on what your level of risk is. It depends on what you believe is the risk. Like, I mean, back in, 2008, a lot of people thought, oh, I have a steady paying job. And then the Great Recession hit and then crashed. So many people lost their jobs that they thought they had certainty in. So what is it that you are looking for certainty in? Like, do you look for certainty within yourself, or are you looking for certainty in this form of, someone else paying you, giving you a paycheck? Because personally, for me, I'd prefer to find that certainty for myself, because then I know that I can create money out of nowhere.
That's
wherever you go, you have the potential to earn income.
Wherever I go, I have a skill set that I can take with me. Wherever I go, I can say I've done hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. Like, I know that I can go in, even if I were to choose to go back into some sort of job, I could say, this is my skill set. Even if I had to wait tables, I could say, I can upsell the dessert like a mofo, because I've done that. I know that I can translate the skill set of influence into any industry, into any job. So I have certainty and trust in that skill set. I don't necessarily have certainty and trust in someone else giving me a paycheck, because I don't know what they're doing with their business. I don't know how much they believe in themselves and their process. So look at these questions and these beliefs that we've kind of been conditioned to have. The same is true with, well, I didn't get a college degree in it. And that was a big disagreement that my former business partner and I had, because I am from the school of hard knocks and I come from the school of like life lessons and learning on the job. And that's my style of learning, though. I can do well in a classroom, but it's not my epic place of learning. Like, I can force it and I can make myself do it, but a classroom learning is not my environment. I learned that when I was 15 and I got mono and I had to stay home from school for like 6 months. And I had the highest GPA that I'd ever had because I was actually not in the classroom. I was able to learn on my own time. And that was a really powerful lesson for me to see, like, oh, maybe if I'm not sitting 8 hours in a classroom, I actually could learn faster and learn better and do better. And so that was the belief of, oh, I don't have a college degree in this. That's a belief to examine. Maybe because so many people will go back on that default of that conditioned programming of saying, well, oh, that safety mechanism, that certainty of like, well, I should go to college then and learn this. And I'm like, why would you want to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn marketing when by the time you learn marketing, that information is going to be totally different 4 years from now? How people are marketing their businesses is going to be totally different. So you might as well just get in there with some YouTube and a Google search bar and go for it.
Very true. Very true. I think that when people decide to take that leap, it can be rewarding, but having it being a little scary, I think, is a part of the journey. It's not necessarily scary bad, right? But it can make your stomach flutter because you're not really sure maybe, what the business is going to look like. Because like you say, you're creating this baby, right? So when you are talking to people and you're helping them transform, because that's the word I think of when you're talking, are you finding that people are limiting themselves and putting themselves in a box because they're so worried about what other people think about them? I find that a lot. Like, that's how we're conditioned to think, right? How do you stop thinking that? what advice can you give somebody to, like, somebody told me, what somebody thinks about you is none of your business. And I think about that all the time because it's true, but it's hard to implement into your life. Mm-hmm. Help me do that.
Surround yourself with people who are on a similar journey. Because I had one client, she was raised by a mom who was a full-time employee, single mom, but she'd been at a job for 50 years. Now, my client was trying to start a business, and she constantly kept going to her mom for advice, and her mom kept shooting down her ideas because they had a level of quote unquote risk to it. Well, her mom was not on the same path. So look at who you're looking to for advice. Has that person walked the walk? Has that person pioneered a path in front of you that you can draft on? Like in aerodynamics, it's called drafting, and you'll see it in racing, where one person takes the lead and then the other people fall in line behind it. And so if you're able to find mentors and coaches who have been there where you want to go, then that allows you to kind of to guide. It takes away your energy expenditure because you can follow in their footsteps. You can follow that path. So often when we hear of rejection, like the big question that I ask myself when someone rejects or judges me or something, I ask myself, is that person doing what I want to do? Is that person living a life that I want to live? If they're not, then I don't value their opinion. Like, that's their opinion, but that's coming from typically a place of hurt, typically a place of fear. And I'm looking toward mentors who are leaps and bounds ahead of me, who have paved the path with courage. And so if someone comes into my space and judges me or rejects me for some reason, well, I know that if they're not living a life that is how I want to live, then I'm probably not going to take their advice personally. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt sometimes, especially when it's from someone close. But at the same time, this is why I truly believe, especially in these times that we're living in now, in remaining compassionately curious, in allowing for openness and exploration rather than this desire to be right. Like, I believe that I know what is best for me, and I don't think everybody knows what's best for me. And I trust in that belief that I've cultivated with myself, that I do know what's best for me. And I trust in the guidance that I'm given by the people and by God, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, by that higher power. I trust in that rather than on the opinions of other people. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. It can be difficult, but I think if you're serious about your business, you have to be willing to go there, right? And you have to be willing to know that, whatever you're selling or whatever is not going to be for everybody.
Yeah. And that's okay. Like that really is 100% okay. And I think that's especially in a service-based industry. I know when I first got started in coaching, I definitely had a bit of an ego in it because I thought like, oh my gosh, I have these tools that can help everybody. And I was like, but not everybody wants your help. And also I had to realize I'm not always the best person to deliver that help for that person. Maybe I am the gateway drug. Maybe I am I like to think of breakthroughs and transformation as like returning the dial for a safe. And so you may not be the one that completely unlocks the safe, but if I at least turn the dial for someone where somebody goes, oh, maybe I'll start thinking about this differently because they heard me on a podcast, or they downloaded a freebie of mine, or they signed up for a low price program. Like maybe they're not my, $30,000 clients, but at the same time, maybe I helped unlock that and twist that knob just a little bit so that somewhere down the road, someone else is going to help give them their breakthrough. And that's why I believe that I don't believe in competition. I believe in complete abundance, and that if they didn't work with me, then I helped unlock something in them that they can take and that they will get to being completely unlocked and transformed.
I think it's perfect that you're on our podcast because that's everything we're about. We think outside the box. we don't try to judge anything, and that's perfect. You fit in perfect.
And that's so true about what you said about believing in perfect abundance, because that's one of the ways, or one of the keys to manifesting. Because if you believe that there's lack, then that's what you're going to get, right? So you have to believe that there's enough for everybody, more than enough. So like, when we were starting the podcast, and James is a numbers guy, so he looks at the numbers, who's listening. And my thing is, there's a ton of podcasts out there, right? But there's more than but there's more than enough listeners for all of us to have whatever you deem as being successful for your podcast. And that's going to be different for every podcast, right? Some people do it just because they just want to do it and they don't really care who listens, but some people want listeners, and that's what they're going after. So, but that level of success is different for everybody. So I think that's a perfect way to end the podcast, because you're a wise woman, Kim Spencer.
Oh,
wise woman,
Kelly.
You are like Yoda.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to throw a nerd reference in there.
Wise.
I appreciate that one. That's one that I actually use with many of my clients, because most of my clients are Gen Xers. So they all are a bunch of Star Wars nerds. Say that I married my best client.
That is funny. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast and speaking with us. I truly appreciate you. I'm sure James does. I'm not going to speak with him, but we appreciate you being with us today. We really do.
Thank you so much, Kelly and James. It has been a pleasure being here and talking about some crazy shit.
Thank you.
High energy describes Kim very well. You could just feel it, and it's funny because she's a motivational speaker, but hearing her speak motivated me. She wasn't trying to give us a motivational speech, but just the interview, she just motivated me. I like that.
I said she's a wise woman.
Yeah, she is. And, she is very, and I like the way most of our guests want to share their knowledge.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, let's put it this way, James. If you don't want to share your knowledge, there's absolutely no reason for you to be on this podcast.
Well, that's why I'm here, to share my knowledge, man.
I'm talking guest, not you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Talking the guest. If they want on here to share their knowledge or their experiences or their stories, why on earth would they be here?
Well, other than that we're awesome, we have a badass podcast, there is that.
Well, but you don't need to be on the podcast to tell us that we're awesome. You can just go to our website and tell us that we're awesome.
Oh, that's true. Or go to our media, people, pump us up.
Yeah, so you can go to www.thatsomecrazyshitpodcast.com, which can take you to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube. You can drop James a note on his blog telling him how awesome his blog is. You can just drop us a note telling how awesome we are. And if you wanted to come on the podcast to tell us how awesome we are, we might entertain that.
That would be awesome.
It would be awesome. Anyway, I don't have anything for random bullshit. Next week, we have another guest. A very interesting topic that we'll talk about.
Give us a teaser.
I'll give you a teaser if you are trying to master your mind.
Master your mind. All right, then.
Okay.
Well, until then, keep your minds open, people.